Yes. So Hassan is a name that's getting around, and um, I mean he's got like 30,000 followers every day that he streams, and he streams like almost all the time. I noticed, like at least once a day,
Yeah.
for something like 4 to 8 hours, and anyway, like I think that um, hang on a sec, let me just switch this over. So he does a lot of like, what do they call it, React Andy type videos. So React Andy is a YouTuber that makes a video where they're reacting to something else, to another video, to a song, whatever. And so he does a lot of like React Andy type videos, and a lot of his React Andy videos are towards other political YouTubers, um, different news articles or news reporting, some debates, that kind of thing. And so, uh, and these are really popular. Like I would say, like a good portion of his audience became interested in him through these kind of React Andy videos. And so,
Yeah. 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 So, I mean, yeah, he's got quite a following. So, I mean, this first video by Caitlin Bennet, I haven't heard of her, so I had to Google her.
she's like
But
a right wing troll, basically.
well, I mean, she describes herself as libertarian.
Yeah, she's a
And
right wing troll. So,
quite honestly, I mean, I've had some libertarian friends, and I mean, she's not even like, yeah, she's quite the character, not really that intelligent as far as I'm
yeah.
concerned. I mean, like
So,
some of the dumb shit she said, but that's besides the point. I mean, first of all, before we get into the video, I'm not a fan of these videos because especially from these are the type of videos these trolls produce. Because you
right.
can go out and interview thousands of people, and you pick the worst people, that make them look bad to support your cause, and you can edit out all the rest. So it doesn't doesn't really prove anything in on that basis. I don't like it. But anyways, so why don't you explain what's happening in the video here?
So she's a popular right wing troll, right?
Yeah.
Caitlin Bennet. And I don't follow right wing trolls myself. Like I'm aware of them. Like I've seen a little bit of their content. I kind of got the idea of what they do. They've been around for a while. There's all kinds of these right wing trolls. That one of the more famous ones is the ask me anything guy about guns. Ask me about
Yeah.
guns. Um,
And she's definitely far right. We should add that she used to be a reporter for Alex Jones on InfoWars.
yeah,
So, I mean, you know,
but Hassan loves reacting to right wing trolls.
yeah,
That's one thing I noticed that he likes doing. He likes reacting to Alex Jones sometimes. Um, and this is kind of something that I think he might have picked up from his like Young Turk days.
yeah,
You know, because he was in the Young Turks, and they do a lot of this. You know, reporting on various right wing trolls, right? And so this is kind of a fun segment for his show, and where he reacts. You know, he watches a piece of this, and this is and so Caitlin uh Bennet is basically going to these people on the beach, and then what she's doing is I got a Google ad here. So she's going and interviewing these people on the beach, and she's asking them like, what do you think about this quote from Donald Trump? And the quote isn't from Donald Trump; it's from Kamala Harris, who basically told people in Guatemala to not come to the United States and to stay there. And then she's popping out after she tells them that it's Donald Trump and then telling them to quote, she's getting their reaction. And then she's pulling out the gotcha card by saying, hey, this is actually from Kamala Harris, the current vice president under Biden. Right. And to see what if their reaction will be any different. And most of these people on the beach,
the American institutional power,
they don't approve of the message even when they find out it's like a Democrat, right?
She was saying when she was campaigning,
and although they do seem surprised because these are all like normies, you know, what political normies. They're not political people.
They're not, you know, they're not that informed or educated enough or on the spot reaction to think about, you know, what could be said. And I've got a couple points, you know, that I'd like to bring up, but you know, have you got a couple points that you'd like to point out specifically in this video?
Well, yeah, like, well, here's the thing, like, most people in the country don't have a political education or background.
Absolutely, and that comes with time. I mean, that was probably me, like, you know, like when I was like, you know, 18, 20 or so, or, you know, like that. And, you know, I thought I read some newspapers and stuff, but I mean, it's more than that, you know, it's the news. At that time, it was the newspaper that aligned with my kind of thinking, you know, but you need to educate yourself with all sides of everything. So that's really what educates you, you know, and getting a whole perspective and stuff.
And the other thing is, so, you know, I mean, I think that Kaitlin Bennett's kind of like an extreme example of like this React Andy kind of stuff, but it, you know, this is like a nice way for Hassan to be able to interact with his chat, right? Like that's what this is really about. This is about him wanting to interact with his chat.
Yeah.
This is a pretty like low key way of doing it. This isn't like high level political reaction kind of stuff, you know, or analysis. And so, and you also have to understand like a little bit about like, well, what's the age group in his chat? And most of the people in his chat, like almost all of them, are under the age of 30. Like we're old men now, Andrew.
Yeah. I know. I mean, and I'm still learning a lot. And I mean, fuck, it took me a long time. I mean, to get to this level.
With the majority of his chat being, I think, between the ages of 20 and 24, and like 15 and 20.
Yeah.
Right. So they're younger people for sure.
Yeah.
But so this is a way, you know, he's obviously poking fun at Kaitlin and this style of, you know, making right-wing videos.
So a couple things that I missed, and I want to ask your opinion. And I mean, so Kaitlin says, you know, so basically says, oh, they are, you know, the Biden administration is just as racist. And I didn't hear much from Hassan. And I mean, even though from our perspective, it is a racist, capitalist is a racist system, but do you think, I don't think specifically her policy was like, I mean, that's what she's capitalizing on. Oh, but, you know, Donald Trump.
Oh, no, Hassan totally made the point that this is just an extension of U.S. policy.
Yeah, I mean, and
like
Donald Trump
makes that
went
point.
to, you know, I mean, it's quite a little bit different too. Not to try and say Donald Trump is any worse or anything. You know, a Marxist should be pointing out this system rather than, you know, like, because I mean, Donald Trump did say, oh, well, the Mexicans bring in drugs and rapists and all of that, and then said that, you know, these countries are shitholes and stuff like that, and we could go on and on and on and on. But one thing that kind of I think he slipped a little bit on, and this is an important part because I recall this from from my university days with my geography professor, and I studied like geography and
Sure.
human geography, and so he had an interview on CBC about Canada bringing more immigrants from the Syrian war. And
wait, who had an interview?
What was that?
You said who had an interview on the CBC?
One of my university professors from UBC,
Okay.
and he's a geography and
All right.
Migration immigration
Okay.
expert. And he kind of really didn't want to because he was saying that we shouldn't do that right now because we don't have the proper systems in place enough yet to facilitate the interaction into the system under this system. And Hassan said kind of that, he said something that's false. I agree. I mean, I agree about, eventually this is what we need is open borders and free flow of workforce. But under this system, Hassan, what he said was like, the opposite is true. If we let more people in, it'll raise the wages for all of us. That's not true. That's contrary to what Marx said.
Did he say that?
We need a surplus of labor force to keep the wages down, and that's exactly why secretly.
I don't remember him saying that.
He said that at some point, and that's secretly why a lot of conservatives like this because they've got a surplus labor force, and that's why like Trump hires all these immigrants, and a lot of conservatives have been called out for the same thing about these refugees because it keeps a surplus pool of labor and stuff in short. So for a Marxist, going beyond that, the technical analysis needs to be a little bit more than that, But
he mentions he mentions that, like, he makes a big speech. I think it's toward the end of this.
So, okay, should be happening.
I'm not talking about people that like live in conservative ass bumfuck parts of this goddamn country. Background.
Yeah, you
Pulled up has been like, no, I like that now.
should we have just
To immigration. More progressive. Florida, where $15 minimum wage.
All right, let's
significantly more progressive.
let's listen real quick to what he has to say here on this.
I mean,
I'm not sure if you can hear it, Andrew.
Fucking empirical evidence
Can you hear
at
this?
all, but like there is plenty of empirical evidence that actually shows that people are technically
Andrew?
significantly more progressive than they let on, and their voting patterns do not actually demonstrate a single goddamn thing about what their actual like ideological worldview might be. 80% of Americans vote on party lines, only 20% vote on ideological grounds. That's one. And two, there are constantly things like in Florida where $15 minimum wage gets passed by a wider fucking by a larger number of people than either a representative, like than Joe Biden or Donald Trump, even though Donald Trump won the state of Florida. So like people are significantly more progressive than the way that they vote, and that's because the way that they vote is significantly limited. And this video is just evidence for that reality, that like even in fucking Florida there are plenty of people who are actually
Donald Trump?
I was looking
Some people
for
to go to L. Porter, aren't you?
Yeah.
I know he goes into
and
like a
has
big
never
lecture
been
about
robust social safety nets do we have in this country. Okay, that's one. And then two, ask them to describe how they are doing that.
So anyway, I know he mentions that he does have the opinion that the United States can hold more refugees. I completely agree with him, actually. Like I think that
Sure,
I'm not,
I do agree
and
that
I think it could
I mean,
totally sustain great numbers of refugees. Actually,
lots of places can. Lots
right.
of places can if we, you know, if we've got the system in place. But you know, under the current fucked up labor laws and stuff too. I mean, let's not. I mean, I agree about better life, but you know,
And
as
then
far as just that technical aspect, saying that more refugees would raise wages, that's not
I don't
true
remember
though.
him saying that. I remember what he said is that the
No, he did say that. I mean, I'll try and find it during the show and stuff, but I know he said it because I would listen to it twice.
yeah, you'd have to find that for me because I don't remember him saying that. I do remember him saying that that people that basically there's a like a two-tier immigration system in the United States, basically where one is legal immigration, which is impossible for most people, and then the other is like this, you know, illegal or undocumented immigration, and which is, you know, which a lot of people are coming in would probably fall under, but and then basically this benefits capitalists because you get to exploit the crap out of people who are not documented, who aren't, you know, who don't have documentation and who basically can get threatened with deportation, etc.
Yeah, yeah.
But as far as raising the wages, I as I remember it, he says the issue is that you have to organize these immigrants, you know, and you have to give them equal rights, and that's how you raise the wages.
Yeah, I'll find it. I'll play it later after. But
So
I
that's what I
rewound it
remember.
and I was like, because I wanted to make sure he said that, and I was like, yeah, that's a little bit off, but you know. Anyways, I
yeah,
mean,
so-
overall, I think it's good, and I don't think it really shows that people are. I mean, do you think it shows people are more progressive than they see? I think that might be a little bit of a myth, you know, not quite the most accurate description.
yeah, I'm.
I mean, not as far as progressive as far as what we consider progressive.
Yeah. As far as like whether they're more, that I don't think it proves that anybody's more progressive or less progressive.
I just think it shows.
I think if anything, it just proves that a lot of people are not very politically informed.
And that actually that opposed to what Kaitlin says, that actually the conservatives are at least honest about, you know, their border policy is that, you know, it does that doesn't show anything. It just shows that, yeah, both of the parties are, you know, in line with the, you know, capitalists, and that there isn't really any difference on that front. So anyways.
Well, yeah, I mean, as far as wanting to control the borders and control the amount of people that come in, yeah, I don't think there's a lot of difference there.
But, you know, also too, I mean, you know, there's a lot of countries like that, and that's what kind of bothers me about like these commentators in the states that do that and stuff. I mean, you know, it's the same thing with a lot of countries when you come into the country undocumented and stuff like that. But, you know, I mean, it's just easier as a gateway from Latin America, you know, to America, as opposing to get to Canada. I mean, can't really walk in the ocean up to Canada. But
well, yeah, most countries have severe border restrictions on immigration.
Yeah.
Because every capitalist country, you know, which is run by the capitalist class needs to be able to
select.
well,
the
they need to
people
be
that they
able
like.
To,
For instance,
they need to be
Canada,
able to control
you
labor.
have to. It used to be where you had to have you had to be wealthy to come here, a certain amount in the bank.
Right, but the bottom
They want to control labor or the people that move, but just the rich people and keep the poor people in the countries and allow corporations to move, assets around and exploit labor in different countries.
yeah,
So,
right, but the capitalist class wants to control labor, the amount of labor in the labor pool,
well, yeah.
right?
All right. So, any final thoughts, or you want to talk about this other?
Let's just move on. So while we're talking on Hasanabi, I've been talking to Andrew for like, we've been talking about this for a couple weeks now, right? Like, and on Hasanabi, and here he is. He's this is him like having a debate with Nick Pollum. Nick Pollum is he's another like Twitch streamer guy, and I think a lot less political than Hasanabi. Hasanabi's like, I think he's like the first real streamer to be political on Twitch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at least from like a especially like from the left.
Yeah.
And so I think this is like in his Austin, Texas trip, and he's talking with Nick Pollum, and Nick Pollum is like, he's kind of what you'd imagine as far as the political makeup for a Twitch streamer, like, not too bright. And
I think he spent too many times playing video games. He's like all-seeing eye. Everybody gets a house and what else? An education, and then if you step out of line, the all-seeing eye murders or sends you to death.
And in this debate, or this discussion between Hassan and Nick Pollum, it's pretty cringy actually. Like, I mean, it's like watching Hassan try to twist himself to
I'm down to open cards.
communicate ideas over to Nick Pollum.
So are you saying?
But like,
he does make a couple good points though.
Well, yeah.
That I haven't heard a lot of people, because a lot of people say, oh, everybody's going to be equal. And he's like, no, it's not everybody being equal and stuff. And there'll still be different areas. But, like in a worker control environment, it won't be like a CEO making a decision on what kind of cleaner a janitor uses when the janitor knows what should be used and stuff, as opposed to, there's sections like, like work, kind of like worker Soviets kind of idea, I think he's more accessible and starting to flesh out the basic ideas. It is definitely, cringeworthy in some parts, but I do like that he did make some points that are, that might have clicked with a lot more people on simply the way he explained it. But like I said in the last video, it's tough having you really have to know your shit and be able to, these kind of discussions being recorded too, it's you got to be on your game too.
Yeah, this kind of conversation, especially with someone who's not very like politically knowledgeable, it's difficult to have.
Yeah.
And so like so it's a difficult kind of like conversation to have, and you can tell that Hassan kind of struggles a little bit with this conversation. Now they're doing it, of course, because they're on camera, right? Like, so this is all live.
Yeah.
There's an audience with tens of thousands of people watching them bake a cake or whatever. I think pancakes.
Pancakes,
yeah. And and so they're having this side conversation to keep people entertained, right? But like, it's a difficult conversation to have. It seems to show that Hassan has some limited experience with this kind of conversation. But I mean, I think the significance is the audience, is who they're doing it in front of,
Yeah.
Like, as far as debate, it's not even a debate. Like, I mean, Nick Pollum is like, like an idiot, right? Like a total fucking idiot. And I think Nick Pollum even realizes he's an idiot. Like, and so really this is just Hassan.
Yeah, I mean, he says later, he's like,
trying to
oh, well,
explain a few
I'm
things.
not that, I'm just kind of making fun because I don't really know, like.
Yeah, I mean, he's trolling him a couple times, right? Like, and, but I mean, this conversation is happening in front of thousands of people, and that's the significant part,
Yeah.
And there's, like, I mean, for all the talk about, Hassan's like difficulty with explaining, some ideas like of how communism could work. Like there's no group that has this kind of audience, period. In the United States.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even think Illinois doesn't have this many followers yet either.
And not only it's not, you gotta understand, Andrew, it's not just Hassan's audience, it's Nick Pollum's audience. That's another 20,000 people. And it's like every streamer on Twitch is following Hassan now. So it's all their audiences too. We're talking about like maybe 1 million people.
Yeah.
So like, as difficult as it is for Hassan to do this, and it's a lot on his shoulders, in my opinion, like it's almost like he's biting off more than he could chew right here. It's like, I still appreciate it for what it is, which is,
I appreciate it too, and
right?
I think he's playing it. I think he's playing it smart,
and he struggles in this conversation.
A difficult one to do, but
he's struggling in this conversation a little bit, but it's like he's only going to get better at these kinds of conversations.
Me too. I mean, I probably, I mean, I can't say I would have, done any better,
right?
With somebody too.
This is a very informal kind of conversation.
I blow up on
yeah, for those who are wondering, this is like this is not a formal debate. No. This is literally them hanging out, making pancakes on stream. Literally tell you, we're gonna run ads talking to him trying to talk about communism. So
let alone explaining communism. Like I just wrote like that's what I've been writing, like, and it's like 80 pages explaining it simplified on like what I think, like the basics of Marxism is on how I understand it. Having a live conversation like this, very difficult.
Okay, so let's kind of switch gears up, Andrew. So like, I know we kind of talked about this just a little bit last week.
Yeah.
About the mass grave that was uncovered over at the residential school in Canada that was owned by the Catholic Church. And then
it's just down the road.
As I understand it was owned by a Catholic Church and it was taken over by the Canadian state. Is that what happened?
Yeah, like in like 1969, but it was always sanctioned by the Canadian government,
right?
From the beginning. Our founder, John A. Macdonald, our first prime minister, was highly racist, but that was the times. Most that's the way it was. And I mean,
so this mass grave uncovering, like, I don't know how, first, do you know how they even came across it? Like, how'd they find it?
Well,
was it
they started doing, like, I mean, they're asking for more. I think they've done basic, like, sonar scans, but from what I understand, they've requested more money to find like the extent of it. But all of this has come out of like the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which started in 2008 to deal with this, to deal with the colonial legacy. And Prime Minister our conservative prime minister at the time was Stephen Harper, and
was this a part of that commission, the uncovering?
Yeah,
of
I
the
mean,
graves?
all of this is starting to come out of this has been going on for quite a long time. There has been
Yeah.
suspected graves and stuff, but this is the first mass grave that has been discovered. And while Harper denied, he said, "Oh, this is all because of the Catholic Church, and Canada doesn't have a legacy of colonialism." At least Trudeau has said, we have to deal with our colonial past and present. So, but neither has done anything to do anything about this. And I mean, so what they're trying to do now is they are trying to get more money to figure out the extent of it. But there's plenty of
wait, who's they that's trying to get the money?
Well, Indigenous leaders,
Okay,
and other activist groups to try and fund more exploration, because there's been anger building for quite a long time. I don't know if you remember, or did you hear of Idle No More?
yes.
The Idle No More movement, and I mean it's been building, this kind of anger for a while. And what came out of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was 20 guidelines, 10 of which been implemented, and some reparations, which so far worked out to be 4.1 billion, compared to I think America I looked at was 1.3 billion. But I mean, that doesn't matter. I mean, and in the article it mentions that there's still rampant poverty here in these First Indigenous nations, and there's much more that needs to happen. But now there's anger among the public. But I read an article the other day that said 80%, most of Canada just blames it on the church, which is they helped set it up, but they helped set it up under the guise of
Right.
Capitalism, the dominant system at the time, with the help of the state, and I don't know if you know this, but the Pope has refused to apologize. Everyone else has
I heard about that. Yeah, the Catholic
the
Church refused
RCMP
to
apologized too, saying that they were ordered by the politicians and the church to go along. They've apologized, Prime Minister, but the Pope hasn't apologized. And I mean, yeah, they played a massive role, but the state was just involved in it as the church. I mean, that's simply passing the buck just to the church is weak for what amounts to just a process of colonization everywhere.
Yeah, but so there's been a number of statues that have been torn down as a result of this, right?
In Victoria there was
protesters.
Well, it was covered in blood. It hasn't been torn down. In Toronto, the Ryerson statue of Ryerson University, because he was one of the architects of the plan, it was torn down, and they are also changing the name. I mean, which this article says it's a good start. And I mean, it's conservatives up here are up in anger about this Ryerson statue being changed, and then they just go to their go-to and then drudge up liberal policy from the past, saying that Trudeau's father was a part of this too, instead of recognizing the whole system and stuff like that, and also the poverty and the lack of clean water still to this day in these communities.
Sure.
So there are a bunch of crocodile tears from both sides, and now there is finally outrage about what is happening. And I think this is good that now people are starting to make the connection of like, because there's been so many racial stereotypes against natives here about, they just sit on their reserve and drinking and like,
absolutely.
this isn't like a
Yeah.
1,000 years ago. The residential school, the last one closed in 1996. 1996.
Oh, I thought it closed in the 80s. Yeah. So
The
I'm about
last
10
one,
years
the
off.
last, the very, very last one closed in most of them closed in like 1979.
Wow.
But even then, 1979, that's not nearly enough. And they're saying that like, like with half them being, close to half them being sexually abused of the survivors. Like, I mean,
Gordon,
I think this is people are starting to make the connections on like the systemic problems that systems like these can produce. So I mean that's maybe one of the upsides. I've been looking at social media reaction, and instead of people talking about let's say 2 years ago, people, as soon as there were indigenous concerns, people be laughing at them. Now there seems to be a little more public support, and hopefully this can start having a more positive effect in like in how all things are developed. And one thing I think this article misses is that it says that we need to align with these workers or with the indigenous people, but it doesn't make a direct connection that they are probably our closest allies in like how they view the land and how it should be shared and how it should be developed sustainably in a natural environment too. So I mean, I think that's a little bit of a miss there on that, but but I mean, and also it makes a great amount of points. I'm actually pleasantly surprised in most of like the points that some people who don't know the situation would this is a required reading for a lot of people. For example, the government has already spent double the cost to buy an oil pipeline, Keystone XL, which is now forever dead. That it's being forced across indigenous lands.
let me interrupt you for just a sec, Andrew. Someone's in chat.
Okay.
Gordon Fiala. I'm gonna try to pronounce your name right, so excuse me if it's not pronounced right. Says my grandparents adopted 2 native girls, residential schools, sexual assaults, wiping faces from their uneducated butts. Was sexual abuse when the schools existed because they were dying of cholera? Like, excuse me? Like, Gordon?
No, that's
Yeah, like that sounds exactly like the kind of shit that we're talking about, huh, Andrew? Like,
yeah. Yeah, see, this is the kind of no, the conditions existed because of that. These schools were, I mean, don't come here and say that shit when the RCMP, when even the government, when everybody else has acknowledged that the conditions in these schools were horrific.
Yeah.
And just migrate? No, they were, I mean, they had less rights. They couldn't even vote. They couldn't even vote till a couple decades ago. So don't give me like this ridiculous fucking garbage about like,
is that,
oh,
I mean, obviously, Gordon Fiala's grandparents and family was connected with these residential schools, and that's why Gordon Fiala feels the need to basically shit on Native Americans, like in Canada, like yeah, because of cholera, yeah, like.
I don't even
absolutely
understand. Like, this
atrocious.
seems like what do you think voting is? That's not about residential. This guy's not making any sense. Sexual abuse was wiping cholera, which was killing them from their butts. Yeah, okay. Enough time spent talking to this guy.
I think we're just gonna remove Gordon here.
Yeah, it's just like fucking, I don't, he's not making any coherence. Yeah, just bigoted, incoherent comments that are not, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, let's move on. So I'm gonna have to.
All right, well, now he's saying something, you know, okay, it was illegal up until the 80s for natives to enter my town. I know what you mean, I agree, but there is a few things. Okay, well, you list them out, Gordon. We'll come back to you. Let's move on to, or what, did you have, you want to move on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's move on. We're talking about the police surveillance project.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so
It's a little loud.
it's a little loud. I'll turn it down here. Just give me a sec. Okay, so the police surveillance project, this was brought to my attention by a comrade, and this is a small project. People are basically monitoring local police in southern Washington and their interaction with a lot of these like right-wing insurrectionist types. And so like what they've been doing is, you know, they've been going through a lot of video footage, both public and private. So basically they use the Freedom of Information Act request to gather official surveillance footage and footage from there's like a state videographer that videotapes a lot of this stuff. So they got it from the state videographer, and then they basically started trying to report on what happened at some of different events, different protests, in an accurate way. Trying to identify individuals in the footage, and you know, like some of these cops, for example, and how they're related to these right-wing groups. It's a little bit of an old school style presentation. You know, it's kind of like, it looks like a PowerPoint slide, like one giant PowerPoint slide. But I gotta appreciate how they just line up all the facts, basically.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just fact after fact. And it's very, I know that there's like some, they have some legal experience as far as like how to build up a case and that kind of thing. You know, there are some, they do have people with legal experience working in this. And so this particular video here, for example, it shows this right-wing couple that they identified earlier, and they're about to like basically start a fight. And so like first punch gets thrown against this person in the black, who I'm you know, I have no idea who that is, the person in the black, but and the woman here pepper sprays him with bear mace. But like you know, and here's another angle of the same punch. And the police are obviously in the area because there's video footage of the police not doing anything, and so they put this in here to show that the police were not doing anything, identified who the cops were that were involved, and made basically a presentation like for a case. And it's mostly all facts. Like they're not, there's not like a whole lot of like theory behind it because okay, so you get the facts. It's like, okay, so I understand what's going on, right? You don't have to. I don't need a big commentary on, the right wing is doing this and that, right? Like you see with a lot of like videos and whatnot that are floating around on YouTube. It's just facts, and that way you can draw the conclusions yourselves. And anyway, I thought it was interesting that pretty much all their videos are kind of laid out this way, where it's just like video with facts and then maybe identifying a character or two to basically report a whole story without getting really emotionally involved or anything, with a lot of emotional commentary that basically kind of, in my opinion, just kind of screws up understanding what happened. And it's just a very effective way of reporting. But the group is small. It has some problems. The biggest problem is that they don't put a lot of their stuff up on YouTube.
Yeah.
And all their stuff should be on YouTube because, as we know, like if you want eyeballs and attention, it's the best platform to use.
Yeah.
Period. Because of YouTube's algorithms, it makes it really easy to search stuff.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I don't really have much to. Yeah, I agree. I really don't have very much to say about it here because our police forces. It's a little different than yours. First of all, you've got multiple levels of law enforcement down there, and we just have city and RCMP, and the RCMP, like the national, they're transferred all around and stuff. So most of it is like, yeah. This is a whole different discussion. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that. That looks like a good project for the area, and especially
But the thing is, it's like a lot of videos, like reporting type videos, are just are really done in my opinion kind of a sloppy way.
Yeah.
And that's one way of doing it. I'm not saying it has to be like a PowerPoint. There's cleaner ways of, like we're in 2021 now, like a lot of us aren't using PowerPoints anymore, but like it's obviously very, like you could have better editing and whatnot, but having the facts, having the video footage lined up like that, you don't have, it tells the story by itself of what happened.
Yeah.
And that's like, in a lot of ways, that's a lot more powerful than having someone say something happened like this way, because seeing the facts, okay, like what is there to argue about? That basically, that there was an unprovoked assault and the police just stood by and watched it go down, and to have the video footage of it, that speaks for itself. It's much more powerful because a lot of people won't believe you. Anyway, I thought it was interesting. I like the way they presented it in a very factual style.
Yeah, as opposed to editorializing and
Yeah.
it's just, straight facts.
Yeah, because I know a lot of these reports happen with different protests and stuff.
Yeah.
So,
all right, are we on to last article, theory and on to theory and state of movement?
Right.
All right, so I was asking Art before the show because he's a lot more familiar with the opposing ideas discussed here. So I'll let Art take it away on this one.
Yeah, so I didn't know about this article till you told me about it, Andrew, but the article basically goes over like the early communist movement and about the early communist groups and all the infighting that they had from basically the turn of the century on over. And there's a couple of like kind of strange I guess like, well, I mean, I think it's the author basically attempts to take this kind of communist sectarianism and counterpose it and compare it to the trade unions and how the left has interacted with the trade unions over the early 20th century, namely with dual unionism and entryism, which is the idea of having a separate union that's more radical, like building a whole new trade union essentially, and with the understanding that the old trade unions cannot be changed, they're corrupt, blah blah blah, and so you set up a separate trade union. And then entryism being to send people to enter into an existing trade union that might be corrupt, with the idea of reforming it from the inside out.
I mean, entryism could be, it can also be used in the political sense, like what's going on in the UK Labour Party.
Right. Yeah. The same ideas.
Same idea. Okay.
Yeah. Changing it from the inside out, sending in people to enter into it, to join it, and then with the intention of being able to change it from the inside. And like, I mean, I kind of thought that comparison was a little bit confusing. I mean, it seemed like it was confusing for you. But basically the early communist movement was a mess in the United States.
Yeah.
Like, it was a total mess. There's a lot of sectarianism, there's a lot of factionalism, there's people at each other's throats. People had disagreements, they couldn't, and so because they had disagreements, it was like, we're going to build our own organization. And one thing that I like about this article is it mentioned, like, when the Bolsheviks got involved. So basically eventually you had two parties, rival parties. They both went to the Bolsheviks. They both tried to justify the fact that they had a separate party from the other and how they were right and the other guys are wrong. And the Bolsheviks basically said, look, you guys are going to merge.
Yeah.
Because we, as in like the international communist movement, will not benefit from having two rival communist parties in the United States, right? That are at each other's throats, because this is over pettiness, basically, and that's how they saw it.
Yeah, that's logical,
right? And so they wanted one party. They said basically you'll be way more effective under one party. Like, get it together, and so that happened for a period of time until, eventually there's more splitting and infighting, etc. And all the way up until today, it's just more splits and infighting and Trotskyists and Stalinists, etc. Right? But the principle that the Bolsheviks presented was basically this idea that, hey, like, we want to win, and the capitalists want us divided and fighting each other, and the only way we're gonna win is if we figure out how to work with each other.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't mean we have to agree on everything, but there needs to be some strategic unity.
Yeah.
And so like reading through this, I just gave you basically the quick and dirty summary, but you can also read, if if you're interested, you can always read the Cosmonaut article about all the different splits and and sub fights and faction fights for the last 100 years. And it doesn't even cover all of them. It only covers the ones in like the 1920s and the 10s.
Yeah, I guess this is going towards a book or whatever. So,
right.
I mean, so he ends it with saying, rather, we need individuals committed to understanding that at times certain acts of division can be revolutionary, while at other times it can be wholly reactionary. The only means to understand which is to assess whether the action impacts you or the group in question, or if at the very least seeks to impact working people as a whole. So what do you make of that ending there? I mean, I think it's obviously that some acts can be revolutionary and some can be wholly reactionary. But what is that? How is this gonna, how does this get us?
I don't think that the author really learned anything from what they just presented.
Yeah.
Like
maybe
I mean, I do think it's a good article.
Yeah.
But usually when I say things are a good article, I don't necessarily mean it has good conclusions.
Yeah.
Like
yeah,
I mean,
that's what I was like, okay, well, how is this going to apply to? So maybe this is leading to something in his book. I mean, I guess we'll have to follow that, because it kind of ends like, I'm like, okay, well, I know that part. I mean, it kind of ends with a duh. I know that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like the thing is, like, yeah, of course there's going to be moments where something's revolutionary and something's counter-revolutionary, right? But the principle here is what is best for the working class today? Like, what can we learn from this? Because for this 100 years of faction fighting and sectarianism and finger pointing, the communist movement in the United States is weaker than ever.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah,
it hasn't built
both
anything.
Agree on that one.
It has not built anything.
Weak with a lame frame.
Principles or no principles.
Yeah.
It hasn't built anything, and it's basically broken itself down, like into nothing. It's literally broken and fallen completely apart, which is what the danger of, like, of splitting, right? I mean, a split is logically, when an organization splits, just like a molecule, it's not going to be a complete molecule. It's not going to be as big. It's actually breaking down, right? So yeah, maybe in some instances it's important to have a split, but there's a thing where it's become like a fetish to constantly break things down into smaller and smaller elements. I mean, eventually you have individuals, like breaking down this much, and like it's not a winning strategy. So, okay, so like maybe we should address Gordon Fiala.
Yeah, real quick. He does say he's a commie. Maybe we misunderstood some of his because some of it's a little rambling, Gordon. It's difficult sometimes on chat, but
I don't understand his comments.
I don't understand some of them. But Gordon, if you want to type out your views on this or the show, you can go to our subreddit, US
Marxist
USCA
underscore
Marxist.
USCA.
Yeah, forget that.
The link is right there. So
Yeah, the link's right there. Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for watching.
Yeah.
We'll be back 2 weeks from now. We're gonna take next week off, right, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm out of town. Sorry, guys, but yeah, I'll be back the week after.
So next week is the 20th. We'll be back on the 27th. Am I right?
Yeah.
That's right. And then so 27th, 12 p.m. See you then, guys.
Yep.